All right, Parsha 101, Parshas Devarim. Devarim is the first Parsha in the last book of the Torah. All we are at the end. And actually, this whole book of Devarim is all Moshe's farewell address to the Jewish people. So while there will be some new things in it, there's a lot of it's a recap, and it's all just Moshe preparing, rebuking, admonishing, etc. The Jewish people, they're now at the cusp of going to the land of Israel. So the name for this week's Parsha of Devarim comes from the first verse, Ela Dvar Moshe Diber Moshe El Kol Bnei Yisrael. These are the things, the words, the speeches. This is what Moshe told the Jewish people, and where they are now standing on the east of the Jordan River, ready to cross over. It's the first of the month of Shvat, the year 2488. So the Jewish people left Egypt in 2448, and it's now the year 2488. So 40 years later, and it is time. Moshe has done all that he's supposed to have done, and this is the end. And it says specifically, this is coming after he's conquered the two great kings of Sichon and Og from previous Torah portions, because Moshe is not just coming to just make speeches and rebuke. He's proven himself. He's shown what he could do. He's actually sort of engaged in. He's not really going to be part of the conquering of the land, but he has been part of these wars that are the precursors to it. So he's got standing now to speak up. And he starts, and a lot of what this week's Torah portion is a lot of it is recap. And Moshe says, you were at the mountain, you got the Torah, you're at the mountain, and God says you've dwelled too long at this mountain. Which kind of just to sidetrack for a second, or just add a Chassidic insight, you've dwelt too long at this mountain, as in you've taken in all this holiness, but now you got to go forth with it. As in you can't just stagnate in your level of holiness. You can't just be sitting around and say, oh, I've done enough, or I have enough. You have to keep moving, and not just that. You gotta spread the light. You gotta get out there. You gotta move with this. So God said it's time to move on from this mountain, and you got to go live in the real world, and you got to go take possession of the land. Moshe also kind of recaps what happens all the way back in Parshas Yisro, when his father-in-law suggested the tiers of judges. So he talks about how there were judges there. I had all these cases to judge, etc. And we made these appointments of different levels of judges. There were leaders of 1,000 and hundreds and 50s and 10s, etc. And you have the judges. They're going to implement justice. They're going to be also kind of moral leaders for the people. And you also have those who will help the judges implement all these things. And you kind of give the message to the judges that you have to treat all cases equally. Don't take a rich man more or less seriously, or a guilty man more or less seriously, or, oh, this is what you'll say in court so you don't embarrass someone. And then afterwards, you'll be like, oh, by the way, this is the real thing. Everything that's got to come before you has to have equal weight, equal measure, equal consideration, and be properly judged. He also throws in a few things also about the Jewish people, like as soon as the judgment will be done, you say, oh, no, wait, never mind, I have new evidence, I have a new witness, and you're acting crazy with all your court cases. So he kind of adds that in also. Then he says, okay, then we're finally ready. We traveled and we're ready to go conquer the land, but you decided you had to have spies, right? You should have trusted that God said, this is going to be your land. You should have trusted. So God was going to help you conquer the land. And instead you decided, no, we need to have spies. Yeah, that's previous Torah portions. So we're not going to recap all of it. And one thing that he does say is that the spies went out and they got these fruit and they brought it down. They brought it back down to us. And what the commentaries kind of point out, the language that is down is because that Israel, wherever, compared to everywhere else in the world, Israel is always considered up. It's considered the high point of the world. Even if there might be, Everest might be a little tall, it's not about that. But because Israel is such a holy land, it is considered the high point of the world, top of the world. And then Moshe goes on about the different kind of challenges, the different times that the Jewish people challenged God about what they did have, what they didn't have, and the mun, and then this, that, whatever. He said, oh, God hates us, that he brought us to this place, and we're in the desert, or how come we can't be in Egypt? He goes through all of it now. Then he also tells them, Yeshua is going to lead them. Yeshua is taking over after me. Your children are going to be possessing this land that we go into. This is also kind of part of the recap because the generation of spies died out, so those children were going to possess the land. He goes through a lot of the travels that they went through. We went here, there, and there. He talks about when they did finally come to the border of the land, there were certain sections that God said, don't engage with these people. This is not yours to conquer. God had very specific boundaries. God delineates very specific boundaries in the Torah of what the land of Israel that the Jewish people would be conquering would be. There's a section of the land, there's parts of the land that would be conquered in later times, especially Messianic times. It was a section that they were supposed to conquer with Joshua leading them, with Joshua leading them. This is the part they would conquer. So you had this area called Mount Seir that you were not supposed to. You're supposed to go around that because that land was given to the children of Edom, which is children of Esav. That was for his children. Then there was Moab. That's Lot. His children got that, even though Moab was involved with the whole thing with Balak and the cursing and the Bilam and that sort of stuff. There's the land of Ammon that you're supposed to go around because that's also Lot's children, right? You could have say, hey, can we pass through your land peacefully, as in we're not gonna, we'll buy anything that we'll eat or drink. And it's kind of like, look at how much money we got after leaving Egypt because God fulfilled all of his promises to us. But of course we see what happened with Moab went to Midian and they tried to curse, and the Jewish people had come peacefully, and there was a mess that occurred. And then Moshe kind of also recaps some of the history of the land, like you went to this place that was originally owned by this people and now it's owned by this people, etc. And then Moshe also talks about how the fight that they had with Sichon, these giant kings Sichon and Og. These were lands that they weren't specifically supposed to conquer, not now, but because they came out to war against them, they did conquer them, and they plundered and they pillaged and they took over all these lands. And just describing Og, who was a massive giant. They actually say Og was around during the time of the flood, or like during the time of Abraham even. But Og was a massive giant that he slept on this iron bed that was about 14.2 feet long and 6.3 feet wide. And he just says they were because we totally took over his land, there were so many spoils. It was like ad nauseum. There was so much already. And then he talks about the land for the 2.5 tribes that they got. And then Torah portion cats up. He tells Yeshua, look, you've seen what God has done. You've seen what he did with these 2 kings against them. Don't fear. He's fighting for you, right? You're going to conquer the land. All's going to be good. And that's actually the end of this week's Parsha.